All right, so I've been seeing a lot of news regarding J.D. Vance's positions on abortion, different things he said in different times of history. So I decided, let's just look at it. Let's set up a timeline. And as I was doing that, I realized the arc is very interesting. So let's get right into it. October 2021, Vance compares abortion to slavery on the Catholic Current podcast. He says, there's something comparable between abortion and slavery, and that while the people who obviously suffer the most are those subjected to it, I think it has this morally distorting effect on the entire society. You know those annoying vegans that compare meat eating to slavery? I've run into this a lot being a vegan, and I generally strongly discourage this tendency. Looking beyond that, if you will, I want to know, what does he mean by this moral distortion, right? He's claiming, what is it? That there's going to be some morally distorting effect on the entire society. And so I thought, okay, if I'm going to take his position on this, right? Abortion is murder. We're murdering babies. What would the moral distortion be? I think we see this occasionally play out in jabs between anti-abortion people and pro-choice people, where anti-abortion people will sometimes act as if whole on live births are happening and then doctors are killing babies. And then pro-choice people tend to make a joke of this and talk about aborting someone after an abortion or after being born, right? They're memeing on them. They're memeing on the absurd anti-abortionists. And rightfully so, because when you dig into the data, first cursory search, you just get a lot of things on infant mortality rates increasing when you outlaw abortion. Because it turns out when you outlaw abortion, people cannot abort fetuses that wouldn't live long and will just live short, under a year lifetimes that are going to be painful. This is when you outlaw abortion because, again, people aren't able to abort fetal anomalies. But digging in a little bit more, I did manage to find two studies done by, what's his name? I believe Lester. David Lester has two studies on the topic. In 1992, he published the results of a natural experiment that saw a decrease in the number of babies 0 and 28 days old being murdered in America after Roe was legalized. The study says, these data, however, do not indicate that legalizing abortion was followed by a drop in the rate of murdering newborns. Rather, it appears to have been the general decline in the murder rate of newborns during this period, which was not related to the legalization of abortion. His 1995 analysis across 39 nations, so a different study, an analysis rather than a natural experiment, followed this up by looking at murder rates of children between 0 and 1 years old and 1 to 5 years old. There was no association between the strictness of abortion rates and infanticide. So other than circular logic of abortion is bad and having abortions in society is bad because it normalizes abortion, I don't really see where he's going with this. Cheap rhetoric abusing racial trauma. Worse than the annoying vegans. What a way to kick off the timeline, huh? If you were wondering, is Vance an anti-abortion extremist and mark insensitive, reckless, sensationalist rhetoric off of your bingo card? January 2022. Vance argued that people seeking abortions via travel necessitates federal action. But let's look at how he did this. So, his quote, I'm sympathetic to the view that, like, okay, look here. Here's the situation. Let's say Roe versus Wade is overruled. Ohio bans abortion in 2022, or let's say 2024. And then, every day George Soros sends a 747 to Columbus to load up disproportionately black women to get them to go have abortions in California. And of course, the left will celebrate this as a victory for diversity. That's kind of creepy. Doesn't take long for us to get into him romancing conservative conspiracy theories, does it? George Soros. He's really not wasting any time in narrating a horror story of conservative boogeyman George Soros to try to paint activists helping people to get abortions into something so terrifying, creepy even. Evoking George Soros here will be particularly salient emotionally for racists, conspiracists. Are you familiar with the black genocide myth relating to abortion? There are some people who will claim that basically black people are, I guess, self-genociding because other people are coercing them into having abortions. So you're either claiming that black people are self-genociding, or you're taking away people who gets abortions agency and claiming that that's something done to them rather than something they seek out and choose themselves. And in this conspiracy theory, it's basically claiming that spooky people, Planned Parenthood oftenly is targeting black communities disproportionately to get abortions. The reality is, when someone chooses an abortion, it's a result of an unintended pregnancy or a pregnancy that they cannot carry to term for whatever reason, whether it be their own health, the health of the pregnancy itself, or the circumstances around them. They can't afford to care for another child, and it'll cause problems for their current kids, or whatever the case may be. So it's not like pregnant black people are going to want to keep their pregnancy and then suddenly George Soros shows up sending a 747 that's showing how cool and fun abortions are, and black people are disproportionately going to show up. This is absurd. How is Soros going to get them to have abortions? If someone wants to have an abortion, they will seek it out and seek help from those who will provide the help. So he identifies a need or desire that black people disproportionately have for abortions, but fails to investigate that outside of casting them as victims that are simultaneously causing a moral distortion in society. Or would he put that on Soros? Instead of caring about the reasons black people are getting more abortions, which is higher rates of unintended pregnancies because of the historic and current medical discrimination that leads to different birth control usage. For example, condoms rather than IUDs, condoms being less effective at preventing pregnancies. And then also contraception deserts. Instead of acknowledging the issues that we could solve and help it so that black people aren't having to disproportionately seek out abortions, he just fearmongers. But he continues. And it's like, if that happens, do you need some federal response to prevent it from happening? I'm pretty sympathetic to that, actually. So, how hopefully we get to a point where Ohio bans abortion in California and the Soroses of the world respect it. I want to say I hope he misspoke about the comment regarding Ohio banning abortions in California. But I don't think he did, because that would just be the downfall of Roe, which has already happened. He simply does not want people to travel outside of his state and do things that are illegal in Ohio, but not in California, I suppose. So what is he going to do? Follow every Ohioan when they go out of state? Want to make sure that they aren't hitting Nevada brothels, perhaps? What about speeding more than Ohio's speed limits? June 2022. Roe is overturned. Some states, including Vance's Ohio, have strict trigger laws that go into effect. Ohio's is Senate Bill 23, a heartbeat bill that bans abortions roughly around 6 weeks before many people know they are pregnant. It contains 3 exceptions. One, to prevent the death of the mother. The second, due to a serious risk of the substantial and irreversible impairment of a major bodily function of the pregnant mother. And the third, in cases of an ectopic pregnancy. No exceptions for rape. July 2022, Ohio Capitol Journal reports, Black state lawmakers take aim at Vance over comments likening abortion to slavery. State Representative Terrence Upchurch, Democrat from Cleveland, takes the first shot.
J.D. Vance's disgusting views on abortion are an outrage, and Ohioans are taking note.
Upchurch requests an apology from him. Representative Catherine Ingram, a Democrat from Cincinnati, does not want an apology.
I don't want his apology as a black female here in the state of Ohio. Looking at black maternal health issues that we have, and how desperate the healthcare is, how desperate our housing is, and then you have the audacity to take away a decision that women can make for themselves, how dare you insult black women?
Vance's campaign did not respond to a request for comment. Vance, running for Senate, claims for now the state should have control of abortion.
And if elected, would you support a federal ban on abortion?
I think that what I really think so first of all, the Dobbs decision, everybody knows, overruled Roe versus Wade. I think that was the right decision, kicks it back to legislatures at the federal and the state level. My view on this is let the states try to figure this out for now. Ohio has a heartbeat bill. I think that's a good bill. Florida has gone a slightly different direction. Virginia's gone a slightly different direction. When we're figuring this new legal regime out, I think it makes sense right now to let the states decide this stuff. And right now, states are moving in a pro-life direction. I think that's a good thing.
And it sounds like then that you don't think that the Senate or the federal government should have a role on abortion.
Not right now. Not right now. I think right now we need to let the states figure this stuff out. The ruling is new. The laws are new. The legal regime is new. And what the Supreme Court, I think, really gave us an opportunity to do was to focus on this stuff at the state level.
My guess here is that to him, it's good to not come off as an extremist while you're running for office. But how long is this for now going to last? Speaking of states moving in a pro-life direction, September 2022, the Hamilton County Court of Common Pleas issues a temporary restraining order on Senate Bill 23, allowing abortions until week 22 rather than week 6 in Ohio, fighting back against the heartbeat bill. A month after that, in October 2022, Vance signals support for a national abortion ban twice. For now, didn't last very long. And we know why. Vance's Ohio is seeking pro-choice pushback. His state is not moving in an anti-abortion direction. This month, Hamilton County Court continues the abortion ban block. In a debate, Vance signals support for Lindsey Graham's national abortion bill. Graham's abortion bill would criminalize administering an abortion at 15 weeks gestation or later on a national level, with exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. States would be allowed to further restrict abortion. Vance's argumentation is this: you can have some minimum national standards, which is my view, while also allowing states to make up their minds. California is going to have a different view than Ohio. That's totally fine. Is he so sure of that? In a Q&A, Vance is asked, to what extent should the federal government be involved in abortion policy? Vance says, I'd like it to be primarily a state issue. Ohio is going to want to have a different abortion policy from California, from New York, and I think that's reasonable. I want Ohio to be able to make its own decisions, and I want Ohio's elected legislatures to make those decisions, but I think it's fine to sort of set some minimum national standard. I'm glad that he wants Ohio to make its own decisions. Is he okay with Ohioans making their own decisions, though? April 2023. The Biden administration drafted an expansion to HIPAA so the police cannot get access to reproductive health records. This is hugely important, especially considering Vance's desire to find a way to ban abortions in California from Ohio. Would he ever try to chase down his imaginary Soros 747 of disproportionately black women down? Spoiler alert. Yes. Yes, he would. In May 2023, Vance signed on to a letter demanding the withdrawal of the draft, saying it was overstepping constitutional bounds and unlawfully infringing on congressional power. In short, Vance is still thinking about that 747 sent by Soros in his imagination of disproportionately black women, and he wants to make sure that the police can track them down using their medical records from other states. November 2023. Ohioans vote to enshrine stronger protections in their constitution than even Roe had. Vance advocated for people to vote no on Issue 1 in Ohio's special elections. Issue 1 was Ohio's response to Roe falling. Ohioans got to vote whether they wanted a constitutional amendment stronger than Roe or to keep Ohio's old heartbeat bill and a variety of other anti-abortion laws that had been triggered once Roe fell. Issue 1 was allowing Ohioans to vote to add a section to their constitution called the right to reproductive freedom with protections for health and safety. These protections added to the Constitution are stronger than Roe in fighting the chipping away at abortion rights we've seen. Rather than the strict scrutiny of Roe or the undue burden of Casey, Ohio's constitutional amendment focuses on no direct or indirect burdening the right or discriminating against it. So no burdening rather than minimal burdening, and no discriminating against it under Medicare or state benefit programs, which has been incredibly common. The only regulation allowed is for the pregnant patient's health, and that must be the least restrictive means and based on generally accepted standards of healthcare. We will be pulling a little bit of text from this Attorney General's analysis because such a good source. My sources will be down in the description if you want to look over any of them. Ohio's Attorney General's analysis explains, the amendment likely also protects post-viability abortions under certain circumstances. On one hand, it says abortion may be prohibited after fetal viability. It then puts that assessment in one person's hands, the doctor performing the abortion. It provides that in all cases, the doctor determines whether the fetus is viable and whether the pregnant woman's health justifies the post-viability abortion. In addition, the amendment does not define health, and the previous court cases have said health, when not otherwise defined, can include other concerns, including mental health and familial factors, such as how many children someone has, and maternal age. So in multiple ways, this constitutional amendment to Ohio's constitution would be stronger than Roe. Let's look at my top 3 favorite laws that it would knock down in Ohio if they went forth in this timeline and ratified it. First off, you have the obvious one, the heartbeat bill. What more is there to say? Next, you have the 24-hour waiting period and informed consent. Ohio law currently requires a doctor to meet with a pregnant woman a day before an abortion and to explain various information about the procedure. The Ohio Department of Health also provides materials giving information about fetal development and social service information about help available if a woman decides to continue with her pregnancy and give birth. Similar informed consent provisions were struck down under Roe, but later upheld under Casey. They would certainly be challenged under Issue 1, and the court determination would likely turn on whether such provisions serve to burden, penalize, prohibit, interfere with, or discriminate. It is possible to foresee a court decision that it said a waiting period was a burden, but that informed consent is not. If so, neither provision would likely be to survive the exclusive scrutiny test. This is solid. I'd like to see informed consent for abortion torn up and restarted from scratch based on standards that originate within healthcare, not from anti-abortionists playing political games to get their goal of just reducing abortion regardless of the cost. Additionally, the 24-hour wait period is a huge burden if you have to travel hours away. Now you've got a cost of a hotel, time off work, more time off work, etc. No need for the state to tell people how long they need to think their decisions over. So for my third one, I guess it isn't necessarily a law falling, but there are implications. So we're looking at the implications of some interesting wording in this proposed amendment. They say, every individual has a right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including, but not limited to, decisions on contraception, fertility treatment, continuing one's own pregnancy, miscarriage care, and abortion. The Attorney General's analysis looks at this and covers it, speculating. Effect on non-abortion areas such as parental involvement in minors' use of contraception, sterilization, and transgender treatment. These other areas of law are harder to assess because Ohio does not have a specific statute addressing minors' access to these medical treatments or products. However, if the word individual as used in amendment includes minors, Ohio's general laws concerning minors and healthcare could be affected. Some other states have enacted, and some Ohio legislators have proposed laws regarding transgender treatment of minors. Given the uncertainty and the breadth of the terms reproductive decision and individual, as discussed above regarding parental consent for abortion, challenges are certainly likely, with outcomes uncertain. It would certainly be too much to say that under Issue 1, all treatments for gender dysphoria would be mandated at the minor individual's discretion and without parental involvement. This is a developing area of law nationally, and all that could be said with certainty is that Issue 1, if passed, would impact the analysis of any future law. So basically, for Ohioans, the downfall of Roe led to Ohioans voting for even stronger abortion protections to be added directly into their constitutions that might have even wider spread effects for individual rights regarding their reproductive futures. So Ohioans voted on this, and it passed. Good job, Ohio. You make me proud to be a Midwesterner. Christian pro-life Vance reflects on the loss on Twitter. First, we got creamed among voters who disliked both Issue 1 and also Ohio's current law, the Heartbeat Bill. We saw this consistently in polling and in conversations. I don't like Issue 1, but I'd rather have that extreme than the other extreme. This is a political fact, not my opinion. Second, we have to recognize how much voters mistrust us, meaning elected Republicans, on this issue. Having an unplanned pregnancy is scary. Best case, you're looking at social scorn and thousands of dollars of unexpected medical bills. We need people to see us as the pro-life party, not just the anti-abortion party. This is interesting to see him openly acknowledge how much people do not trust the Republicans regarding this issue. And you shouldn't. They're playing political games. And it feels very clear looking through this tweet that he's just aiming to push his own desires. This is the only moment I get to see him even empathize with the realities of dealing with unplanned pregnancies. And I feel like that should be a larger part of the discussion. But we know what camp he's in. He's pro-fetal life. And he's been willing to ignore people's agency and cast them as victims of Soros. Until he's got to track them down and punish them for getting their California abortions that he wanted to ban. Donald Trump has said, you've got to have exceptions. I am as pro-life as anyone, and I want to save as many babies as possible. This is not about moral legitimacy, but political reality. I've seen dozens of good polls on the abortion question in the last few months, many of them done in Ohio. Give people a choice between abortion restrictions very early in pregnancy with exceptions, or the pro-choice position, and the pro-life view has a fighting chance. Give people a heartbeat bill with no exceptions and it loses 65 to 35. The reason we didn't lose 65 to 35 last night is that some people who hate no exceptions restrictions will still refuse to vote for things like issue 1. He's just an anti-abortion extremist that will play political games to enact what he thinks is right. No wonder the voters don't trust you. And when you can't get it through popular vote, you think you just need to convince them more. He goes on that point in the next section. Fourth, we've spent so much time winning a legal argument on abortion that we've fallen behind on the moral argument. I've talked to so many decent people who voted on yes on issue 1, and their reasons varied. Some described themselves as pro-life, but hated the lack of rape exception in Ohio law. Some were worried about Ohio law. Some were worried that Ohio law would prevent them from addressing an ectopic pregnancy or a late-term miscarriage. Some didn't understand the viability standard in issue 1 and thought that of course you should abort a non-viable pregnancy, as that would be a danger to the mother. You can criticize the propaganda effort on the other side for lying to people about these issues or confusing the populace, but it suggests we have to do a much better job of persuasion. And I'm not just talking about 30-second TV commercials. I'm talking about sustained years-long effort to show the heart of the pro-life movement. I really needed to take the time to pull in the quote he had about rape exceptions, but I didn't, not this time. I cannot believe the left in their propagandizing about how you should be able to have an abortion if you've been raped. How dare they? As for this section on people misunderstanding the term viability and non-viable, that sounds like a health and sexual education conversation to have, and the left has been pushing for that. I want better health and sex education. But you know who has been going against that? Very conservative people who are Christian and don't want their kids to hear about sex and think that knowing about the human body is going to embolden them to be going around and engaging in heathenry. And so to blame these things on propaganda, it's absurd. I guess I'll just land on it's absurd. This is absurd. This is absurd. He ends with, there's something sociopathic about a political movement that tells young women and men that it is liberating to murder their own children. So let's keep fighting for our country's children, and let's find a way to win. So far, he seems like a person that can whip up a lot of demonization of people, ignore why people feel the way that they do, blame it on propaganda, blame it on George Soros, and then play political games. Play political games and tell people that they need to moralize harder at other people. December 2023. Vance co-signs a letter to pressure the Department of Health to continue to divert funds meant for low-income mothers to crisis pregnancy centers. Pro-life, huh? We need people to see that we are the pro-life movement, not the anti-abortion movement. And then you turn around and do this 1 month later. 1 month later, after arguing that people need to see the Republican Party as the pro-life movement, not the anti-abortion movement. And now you're going to tell the Department of Health that they need to continue diverting funds from impoverished children to push crisis pregnancy centers. Is this your 100% pro-life position? Pro-life, not anti-abortion position? Honestly, When you're happy to leave children in poverty so that you can let other anti-abortionists provide deceptive care, lying to people, and you don't... Does this help you understand why people don't trust you? Does this help you understand why people don't trust elected Republicans on this issue? Have you considered your own actions? Because you can talk the talk, oh, people don't trust us on this issue, and then go and take funds from low-income mothers, from impoverished children for your pro-life project that, let me tell you a little bit about CPCs, crisis pregnancy centers. I've personally run into a CPC, but I figured you'd rather the Journal of Adolescent Health talk to you about it. My experience is they will lie to you and say they are the abortion clinic. They will harass people outside of abortion clinics. They will lie to you about the resources they offer. But don't let me tell you about it. Let's look at what the Journal of Adolescent Health was talking about. So the Journal of Adolescent Health was covering this because they're concerned with the sexual and reproductive health of adolescents. They also know that these centers particularly market their services to young people, people of color, and individuals with low income. Government funding and support for CPCs is an increasing trend in the United States. Crisis pregnancy centers attempt to dissuade pregnant people from considering abortion, often using misinformation and unethical practices. While mimicking healthcare clinics, CPCs provide biased, limited, and inaccurate health information, including incomplete pregnancy options counseling and unscientific sexual and reproductive health information. The centers do not provide or refer for abortion or contraception, but often advise in ways that give the appearance that they do provide these services without disclosing the biased nature and marked limitations of their services. Although individuals working in CPCs in the U.S. have First Amendment rights to free speech, their provision of misinformation may be harmful to young people and adults. The Society for Adolescent Health and Medicine and North American Society for Pediatric and Adolescent Gynecology support the following positions. 1. CPCs pose a risk by failing to adhere to medical and ethical practice standards. 2. Government should only support health programs that provide accurate, comprehensive information. 3. CPCs and individuals who provide CPC services should be held to established standards of ethics and medical care. 4. Schools should not outsource sexual education to CPCs or other entities that do not provide accurate and complete health information. 5. Search engines and digital platforms should enforce policies against misleading and 5. Search engines and digital platforms should enforce policies against misleading advertising by CPCs. And 6. Health professionals should educate themselves and young people about CPCs and help young people identify safe, quality sources of sexual and reproductive health information and care. But I guess he's okay with that, as long as women aren't murdering their children. He's okay with misinformation getting out instead of going to low-income mothers. If these groups have more money to lie, and these kind of tactics, again, and I cannot emphasize this enough, are why people do not trust you. You are literally backing up liars for your agenda. April 2024, the Biden administration issues the final ruling protecting the medical records of people seeking abortion services. It is now in effect. On July 15th of 2024, Vance said, "My view is that Donald Trump is the leader of the Republican Party, and his views on abortion are going to be the views that dominate this party and drive this party forward. Alabama is going to make a different decision from California." Wait, what was that? Oh, Ohio's not there anymore? Ah, yes. Because now Ohio and California aren't so different. Anyway, Alabama's going to make a different decision from California. That is a reasonable thing. And that's how I think we build some bridges and have some respect for one another. No longer talking about Ohio versus California, I see. Must be rough. But I suppose whatever gets you a higher seat of power, right? Whatever lets you keep pushing your agenda. And he is Trump's VP pick. At the end of the day, Vance is an extreme anti-abortionist that keeps losing. He understands people don't like his stance, so he's willing to play the political game. That means bowing down to Trump to get a slice of power. He went from never Trump to what I've heard described as a true believer. And for his sake, I certainly hope so. His fellow Midwesterner, Mike Pence of Indiana, my home state, was by Trump's side until the moment Trump called on him to not confirm the change of power. Trump was happy to leave his followers salivating about hanging Pence. Good luck. However, it'd be nice to not have to look down that timeline. It'd be nice for his abortion timeline to end on, no longer can compare Ohio and California abortion law, and for nothing notable to follow. But the story's still being written.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good. I love you guys. But